Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Neremik, and today I'm finally making yet another game review. As you can see, I'm taking on Sonic unWIIshed, a game which I've said in 2 out of my 3 top 10 games videos was my favourite game of all time. Now, since recently I've been going back through the game and trying to 100% it, because, you know, the world's been in lockdown, I thought I might as well write all the stuff down while it's fresh in my mind. Just a reminder, as I'm sure you can see by the length of this video, this is going to be massive, so buckle in for a very long ride. I'm not sure how long this is going to be. I'm going to find out as this video actually gets more lines recorded. Just a reminder, like, comment, and do all that stuff. I'd heavily appreciate it. The amount of time that has gone into writing this alone is insane. You know, this is going to be probably my biggest edited video on the entire channel, so don't expect another review for a while unless I feel very passionately about a certain game. But with all that aside, let's get into talking about one of the most underrated and one of the most overhated games in all of gaming history. Sonic 06 was a game people almost universally agree was at the very least bad. Lucky for Sonic Team, it sold well so they had enough money to begin production on a new Sonic game, and they got the green light. Alongside this, they'd also been working on the Hedgehog engine, the graphics engine designed for Sonic games which should allow for better graphics quality and effects, but also having them all blaze past at an insanely fast speed, while also not compromising on performance. At some point in development, the game was actually called Sonic Adventure 3, though they retitled it to Sonic World Adventure in Japan, and Sonic unWIIshed as we know it here, due to the lack of multiple distinct playstyles. At the same time, God of War style games were popular, and in a bid to try and draw in some form of new crowd to Sonic games, the game's director, God forgive me, Yoshihisa Hashimoto, asked that a concept that eventually became the Werehog be implemented into the game. In 2008, 3 versions of Sonic unWIIshed were released: the HD version for PS3 and Xbox 360, the standard definition or unWIIshed for the PS2 and Wii, and the mobile version for flip phones, which exists. The immediate direct response from fans and critics was varied, with some saying it was the best Sonic game yet, others saying it was the worst, and general consensus just being it was okay, or, my favourite thing ever, a mixed bag. Nowadays, if you look on the internet, you'd find copy-paste reviews which list the same points everywhere, see people saying that only half the game is good, and I'm glad to say that I'm not one of them. Why, you may ask? Because I actually played this more than the main game. I know, shocker, it's like I don't work at IGN for a living. That's right, baby, I forked over those £70.50 for those DLC levels. I did most of those town people missions that I could find. I subjected myself to those hot dog missions, and I sure as hell collected those goddamn souvenirs. No, I'm getting off track. Now, personally, I picked the Wii version of this game for my birthday in 2009, and I thought it was alright, even if the final boss did take me multiple years to beat. I thought it was at least a decent game, but I'd never realised it was actually a better version for next-gen consoles. Then later in 2015, after I did learn of this version's existence, I won a £10 Amazon voucher in a raffle my school ran to encourage people to read, and being one of the 4 people in my year group who could actually read a book correctly, it made sense that I actually won on this off chance. So using that £10, I bought the PS3 version off Amazon. I put it in my PS3 and I was stopped out about because I hadn't been collecting Sun and Moon medals. More on those later. But what are my opinions on a game that I couldn't even finish on my first run through? And more importantly, what the hell is Night of the Werehog? Oh yeah, it's film time. See, this is a review of Sonic unWIIshed, and this was released as a piece of promotional material in the lead up to the game. See, if you're playing Sonic unWIIshed, chances are you were going to have seen this short, which was animated by Marvel Animation Planet, who were originally meant to be working on the Sonic movie. Now, this was released in the lead up to the game's release to try and build excitement around the game, and did it work? Yep, this whole thing is animated, and I think many people will agree it is a highlight of Sonic's history. This thing is just a masterpiece in audio design. The choreography in the fights is pretty cool, and just the visuals. Anybody who's seen this will let you know that the visuals are goddamn amazing. Like, it's most people's Halloween go-to tradition. Now, not to mention, there isn't even a single line of dialogue here, but everything is conveyed so well that they wouldn't even need any. Everything here just feels so good to watch, and I highly suggest you watch this even if you're not a Sonic fan, because it is truly a great time. Now, what I like is it's also viewable in 4K rather than the original 720, because some Sonic fans actually took the time, which allegedly took 2 whole days, to upscale it into 4K 60 frames per second for YouTube. So there is no reason why I shouldn't watch this. It is a great short, and it is part of this game, which is why I'm including it. Seriously, just imagine if these were the people to work on the Sonic movie. Not to say that what we got was bad, but could you imagine having a full-length movie with these visuals? Like, it would be gorgeous, it would break records. I still like the Sonic movie as is, but it just makes me wish that we one day could possibly a feature-length movie like this. But So that's Night of the Werehog. It's a pretty cool thing, but let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, and the game itself. This review is mainly going to focus on the HD version for last-gen consoles, also known as the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. However, towards the end I will have a mini review noting my thoughts on the Wii version and the PS2 version as well. But I will make comparisons throughout if I think it'll help to strengthen my point on certain things. Now, as for the plot, which is the same between both versions, so don't worry about getting an entirely different experience, we start out with the best looking cutscene in Sonic history. Made by Mars Animation Planet, the same people who made Night of the Werehog, this cutscene looks gorgeous. Sonic is in fit space, Eggman is supposedly doing a very bad, and stuff gets blown the fuck up. I don't think a single person ever has said this intro is bad, and that's because it isn't. Hell, we even get Super Sonic in the opening cutscene for the first time in forever, and it's a perfect introduction as to what's going to follow. The music here is amazing, and I'm surprised that they even got this to look this good on the PS3. Eventually, Eggman traps Sonic, takes the Chaos Emeralds and whatever the hell that machine is, electrocutes him for good measure, and in a very nice callback to SA2, fires a beam at the Earth to split it into multiple pieces. This in turn wakes up Dark Gaia, which is a destructive force that appears every few millennia. But Eggman plans to use its powers to build Eggmanland, and while this happens, Sonic becomes the Werehog as a result of Dark Gaia's energy being forced into him or something. It's not really explained, but it kind of is, but Sonic's the Werehog now. So after all that's done with, Eggman launches Sonic into space, sending him tumbling down to Earth. The last thing we see in the opening 6 minutes of the game is Dark Gaia spreading over the world, with Eggman seemingly have already won. As he's about to hit the ground, Sonic is caught by a green sphere momentarily before falling the rest of the way. After pulling himself out of the ground, he meets a creature which he decides to call Chip after his love of this ice cream sundae, which I'm sure he'd also have the same reaction over, like, look at it, thank you Hedgehog Engine, very cool. Anyway, Chip has amnesia, and so both of them decide to work together to try and find out who he actually is and see if anyone may know him. As they do decide this, the sun comes up and Sonic turns back into his normal self, much to his own surprise. Later in the day, Chip still can't remember a thing, and as the sun goes down, Sonic ends up turning back into the Werehog, noting that the change is seemingly caused by the time of day. So in the day he's regular Sonic, at the night he's beat 'em up Werehog. At this point we also see the ice cream vendor from earlier possessed by Dark Gaia's energy, and one thing leads to another, and hey, Sonic has stretchy arms. After that, it's a matter of finding and rescue Tails from some of the Dark Gaia monsters, taking a plane to meet Professor Pickle in Spagonia, rescuing said Professor from Eggmanland in Missouri, and then hopping around the world to find the Temples of Gaia to restore power to the Chaos Emeralds, which should in turn make the planet's pieces fall back into place. Now, this will prevent Dark Gaia from waking up and fully destroying the world, so hey, it sounds like a good time. We're also told that Dark Gaia was woken up earlier than expected, and as in the opening cutscene, he was unable to actually wake up successfully, and therefore he was made to spread out across the planet, making him incomplete for the time being. This means that the enemies we've actually been fighting in the night stage are actually small fragments of him. After this, the game's plot kind of takes a backseat. You go to a place, you beat the boss, you find the temple, you move on. Towards the end of the game, after having all cleared but one of the Gaia temples, Chip remembers that he is in fact a White Gaia, the force meant to stop the Dark Gaia from destroying the planet every couple of millennia. Knowing this, they arrive at Eggmanland, and after many hours of fighting through hell on Earth, they arrive at the temple, restoring the final emerald. But it's not over, oh boy! Eggman appears in the Egg Dragoon and fights Sonic one last time in his Werehog form, as they fall towards the centre of the Earth. Once defeated in yet another 2 breathtakingly beautiful CGI cutscenes, Dark Gaia appears and steals his energy that was trapped inside of Sonic, making the Werehog go away, much to the pleasure of most people who dislike this game. One frustratingly but difficult boss fight later, which includes Sonic going supersonic, Chip is sealed inside of the Earth, Dark Gaia is defeated, and Sonic ends up right back where he started, with Chip leaving behind a bracelet of him to remember him by, which is then never seen again. Okay. Anyway, Tails in plain roll credits. So that's the basic version of the plot. And there's still a lot more small details that I missed out, but I have to say though, the whole thing, besides how the hell Dark Gaia works, feels incredibly easy to follow. It's just fix the planet, stop the bad guy, with some fun sidetracking along the way. It's easily much more enjoyable and easier to follow than what we got in, say, Sonic 06 or Secret of the Rings, and it's in no small part just to how well this game is written. Every character is an absolute joy to interact with. Sonic is how Sonic is meant to be. He's cool, he's chilled out, but he can get serious if push comes to shove. Chip is mostly there for comedic relief, but can somewhat pull off being serious in the latter part of the game. Again, with the way his character was for the majority of the game, it's kind of hard to take him seriously when they're trying him out to be this like deity in the final levels. Professor Pickle, Tails, and Amy are all great side characters, and every townsperson has their own unique personality, appearance, and side stories, which progress along in the game, which I think most people would agree is pretty cool. And I have to say, this game by far has the best Eggman writing in all of the franchise. Like, this is backed up by some of the best voice acting in Japanese and English thus far in the series, and what you get is an end result which feels extremely charming to play through. As I mentioned before, this game uses a Hedgehog engine, something that was custom made to make sure that Sonic Team could make their games look as goddamn good as possible. See, while the Hedgehog engine handles all the graphical effects you'll be seeing in the game, the Havoc engine, returning from Sonic 06, is what manages the gameplay, for those of you who didn't know the difference. Anyway, this new engine is meant to allow for high quality assets and effects, while also compressing them just enough for it not to compromise on performance that much. It can range from small things like nice lighting in Windmill Isle Day or the water in Jungle Joyride, to the large set pieces in some levels which still look amazing a decade later, or like the sprawling backgrounds in Empire City, which, and what you get is a game that for the most part, it looks visually stunning in every aspect. Now, there are a few muddy textures in the game, mainly rocky textures more than anything, and yet despite that I think it doesn't bring down the game that much to be a major issue. If you want to stop taking the scenery, believe I got good news to you, because this game has camera control! Yeah, the automated camera can be questionable at times, but like, just move the camera? Sometimes it's slightly fixed in place and you can slightly jostle it, and other times it's fully 360-degree rotational. It's mapped to the right joysticks, so just feel free to stop and appreciate how good this game looks for 2008 if you're not too cared about your rank. Anyway, the lighting in this game is also just great, with reflections of subtle lighting from items such as street lamps, really making the world feel all more realistic and alive. As for how Sonic and Co look, they all look their best in this game. Sonic, Tails and Amy are all in their best designs, hands down, and unlike the games that came before it, the humans in this game actually look like they belong in Sonic's world, and are much more visually appealing than the CG humans we got in SA2 and the blocky humans we got in SA1, Shadow, and 06. And in this game, luckily, every human has a unique design, so they're so easily distinguishable from a distance, without the need to trial and error and speak to each individual NPC in order to progress. Like, you could see Louis Montaigne from Empire City's whole almost the entire way across and still notice him, or you can see Professor Vehicle and instantly notice him. They've got much more unique designs that make this stand out a whole lot more, and the game is all the better for doing that, since it means that you are able to find the person that you want to be able to speak to so much faster, and it makes just navigating the whole boards and speaking to these guys 10 times easier. I honestly can't stress how good this game looks visually, but there is two downsides. Number one is the lack of drop shadow in some areas. See, with the way areas are lit in the day and night stages, there sometimes is no drop shadow directly below Sonic, which can be frustrating on levels like Skyscraper Scamper Night and Eggmanland, which have a heavy emphasis on precision platforming. Sometimes this will make sense because your shadow may be reflected onto the ceiling, but other times it just doesn't make a lot of sense, especially in the sensitive day stages where, by all intents and purposes, the sun should be casting a shadow directly below Sonic. It is one of my few gripes with this game, though luckily it doesn't affect that many levels. Second of all is the frame rate. Now, this game runs well, until it doesn't. Loading new areas or large set pieces like pillars collapsing in Jungle Joyride will cause the game to strain. It is actually running on hardware from about 2006 after all, and yet, despite what many reviewers may tell you, it isn't actually a massive issue. See, while the PS3 version does indeed have the ability to run at 60 frames a second with massively varying results, and whilst the 360 can only do about 30 with a much stable frame rate, the difference between versions isn't all that different because, drumroll please, the frame rate isn't actually that bad. It isn't this unplayable mess that some people would have you believe. The game is playable all the same on either console. It just so happens the PS3 can outperform Xbox, but it can also dip below it at the same, while Xbox is more consistent. Make your choice when picking this game. PS3 can have higher highs and it also has lower lows. 360 is a lot more consistent on the board with frame rate. Now, can this game be frustrating when it freezes? Yes. Can this game be ruined by the freezes? No. I've never seen this game crash in my 10 years of owning the game, so I'm not sure what the hell all those random ass YouTube reviewers are on about, and I've only ever seen it lag in situations where it makes sense, those being the large number of enemies in the nighttime levels, which can cause the frame rate to dip quite reasonably, or the previously mentioned Jungle Joyride pillars. Everything else here just works fine, okay? The only time it'll freeze is for maybe a brief 1 to 2 blip and it doesn't interrupt the gameplay. It will not continue sending you to your death as some people, looking at you IGN and YouTube reviewers, would have you believe. Seriously, if you're about to make a game look bad because you have a vendetta about the franchise, you should most likely at least do some form of research to see if the frame rate is actually bad, rather than just repeating some phrases that you found off Reddit for funny internet comment. Like, honestly, if you're a reviewer which slammed this game for its frame rate, then honestly just resign. Because I've never seen this game lag, and I'm on the PS3 version, which is allegedly more unstable, which... Okay, editor's note, this was played on the PS3 Slim, which will typically run games better because it did come out a couple years later than the original PS3, but my point still stands. It's not that much better hardware, the game still runs fine, so I have no idea what the hell people are talking about when they say this game runs poorly because of the graphical errors. It runs just fine, but it will have its momentary hitch, and I don't see that being as big a problem as some people have it made out to be. As I mentioned before, this game makes use of pre-rendered CG cutscenes as well as in-game cutscenes throughout. And while there's a lot less CG cutscenes than there is in-game cutscenes, they still look both amazing. Like, the Hedgehog engine really brings these cutscenes to life. Even by 2008 modern standards, these still look absolutely amazing, and I cannot stress that enough. Like, some of this stuff is Pixar level quality, and at its worst, it's still a great time all around. There's only one complaint, is that some cutscenes, specifically at night, can lag due to the amount of lighting effects from lamps and different objects, and fur on the Werehog's model. Luckily, it isn't too noticeable, except for the Extra Coons cutscene and Empire City's Night Hub, which really do like to strain from time to time. But again, it isn't unplayable, but sometimes, especially in the hub worlds, it can be a bit annoying. Luckily, as I said, if you're playing on a newer revision of a 360 or PS3, or hell, even PlayStation now, I am told that these games do run at a much better frame rate more consistently. That doesn't excuse this, but it does at least nullify some of the problems that I personally have with this game's graphics. And yeah, in short, this is the best looking Sonic game we've ever had. I'm not even sure how they've managed to go downhill from here, but it is good to see that Sega at least got the graphics in a game right once. Seriously, you could pick this game up for the graphics alone and it would still be worth your while. This game is just visually stunning, even almost 12 years after its release. And I think that just goes as a testament to show just how much, how much thought, care, and love Sonic's team actually put into this game. This game is a perfect apology for Sonic 06. I will say that once, I will say it again. And, you know, that isn't highlighted more than anywhere else than it is in the graphics. This game has my favourite soundtrack of all time. Now, going off that, why is that? Well, this game has Tomohiro Ohtani as the main sound director and composer, and this man knows music. Every track is so damn good, and that's in no small part due to the fact that each track fits the area it plays in perfectly. You're in Chunnan, a Chinese-inspired village, Chinese instruments. You're in Spagonia, which is a mix of EU countries. You get in a mix of electric guitars, violins, and accordions. I'm personally also a massive fan of Skyscraper Scamper's Day track. All those orchestral brass instruments make easily one of the best and most energetic tracks in this game, and it really makes you feel as though this music is coming straight from this massive USA-inspired city. Everything here shines wonderfully, and that's only further backed up by the fact that each track has a nighttime alternative. Yeah, in the hub worlds this keeps the same melody, but can change the instruments and tempos to make something calmer and more in tune with the new setting. In the actual night stages, you get completely different jazz fests of tracks. Sometimes they'll use entirely different instruments, sometimes they'll go in a completely different direction. I'm personally a massive fan of the saxophone and arid sounds. Seriously, that solo was insane. Or the low synth bass and cool edge. Jazz is a pretty nice genre for me, so the fact that a lot of these tracks are jazz inspired and done so well is a massive plus. Seriously, give this soundtrack a listen if you haven't already. It's almost entirely available on Spotify and iTunes. Except for one song. Yeah, for some reason, the game's main vocal theme, Endless Possibility, performed by Bowling for Superstar Reddick, isn't available on Spotify or iTunes. Which is a shame because I really like the song. I know some people don't like the songs that aren't Crush 40, but here it works. I think if Crush 40 actually did do the theme for this game, it would have not been as good as what we got. Since the chillback theme of this game really wouldn't just gel well with their style of music, and despite the fact that Crush 40 still rocks, I like what we got. It's a nice upbeat theme and is definitely one of the better themes out of a Sonic game. In addition to this game also has a second song which was luckily included on the digital release. My Dear Friend, which is something I actually had to be reminded that existed, is an okay song. It's rather than being Sonic's theme for this game, it's more Chip's theme, or at the very least, the relationship Sonic and Chip have. I know some people like the song and others are just indifferent to it, and some are slightly put off by the vocals. Personally, I think it works just fine as a secondary vocal theme. Moving on to the boss fights, you end up getting two completely different tracks, which I think perfectly convey the scenario of the different bosses you'll be fighting as either Sonic or the Werehog. In the day, it's an upbeat brass band, which goes perfectly with the scenario of the three bosses you'll fight as regular Sonic. And at night, the same brass band make a return, but instead have a much more dramatic, slow take on the boss theme. I personally really like both of these themes, and I know I've said a lot about this game already, but that's because I do. Now, fun fact for those of you that watch Sonic X, but in the day boss battle music, there's a small section where Sonic's mini theme from that show can be heard. Take a listen. There's also a third boss theme a lot of people agree is absolutely phenomenal and is most likely the best one. Versus Eggmanland, used in the final fight for Sonic the Werehog, is an absolute masterpiece in listening. Chances are I'll be playing it in the background now. This song is the best boss theme. Boss battle day and night are both fine, but this song takes the cake in being best. It goes so well with this fight. It feels like an amazing conclusion to an amazing game, and quite honestly, you should give this entire soundtrack a listen. But in short, we've got high-paced upbeat tracks in the day, and in the night we've got slower jazzy tracks, and for the Hedgehog we've got possibly the greatest boss theme we've ever heard in the Sonic game so far. However, the stage music isn't the only thing on display here. Every cutscene is fully scored and voice acted in both English and Japanese, and I'm glad to say both options are not equally good, but they're both at the very least good or great. The Japanese cast are the same as they've always been, so if you're expecting Sonic, Tails and Amy to sound as they always have, then you're in good hands since Junichi Kanemaru and his crew are still playing the same roles they have been since Sonic Adventure 1. And it shows, because the Japanese dialogue is phenomenal. You can tell they've had full decades to come into the roles. Seriously, the Japanese dialogue is extremely good, though as someone who typically watches anime and dub, I still prefer the English. But talking about the English, this was the final game to use the 4Kids voice actors. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the 4Kids voice actors from Sonic X actually signed a deal with Sega to be in the Sonic games as the actual voice of the characters for so many years, and this was the final mainline game that they were in before they ran out. And about this point they've had about 5 years to come into the roles, and it shows. Jason Griffith is the best Sonic voice, changed my mind. Tails also sounds great, despite the odd line making a him sound like a her, and funnily enough, Professor Pickle was actually voiced by Knuckles' voice actor from the time, and he sounds exactly how I'd imagine him, and I actually didn't know that until I searched up his voice actor. And for the rest of the voices in the game, they get the job done just fine, and the only voice in the game that I actually find to be a little bit off is Chip. See, in the Japanese he sounds like a small child, but in the English he sounds slightly older, which is fine, but he has the most odd sounding lines of the whole cast by far because of that change, especially in the more serious scenes. As I touched on, Chip can slightly pull off being serious, but I don't think he can do it to the point that the Japanese voice actor can. Again, that's not a detriment to his voice actor, it's just a detriment as to how the game is written and who they hired. But if we want to talk about voice actors, it's your boy, Mike Pollock, coming through the walls, Eggman. There's a reason this man is a fan favourite for crying out loud, and this man brought his A game as he usually does. Every scene he's in is an absolute joy to watch, and I can't stress how happy I was when he re-auditioned for Sonic Colors after they got rid of the voice cast after this game. Either language option will work just fine, but English has Mike Pollock as Eggman, which, again, phenomenal voice actor. Eggman is at his absolute peak in this game, but again, luckily the PS2 and 360 versions will let you choose either dialogue option for your viewing pleasure. However, the Wii and PS2 versions will only let you listen to the Japanese if you have a Japanese copy, and the English versions will only let you listen to the English dialogue. So, hopefully that isn't a deal breaker for you, those versions, but again, we're going to get around to them. Now we're getting into the main portion of the game, the gameplay. This was the first game since Sonic Rush to use the boost formula in gameplay. You grab rings to get ring energy, you use ring energy to boost. When Sonic boosts, which can be activated with either square or Rex, he'll see a massive increase in speed and will be able to fly through enemies with ease without the need for a homing attack. With this new gameplay style, Sonic also will gain a new moveset. You can now boost, quick step, air dash, slide, crawl, drift, double jump and homing attack enemies, and thanks to later game power-ups can later wall jump, air boost, stomp and use light speed dash. Each of these moves typically has their own uses, at least once or twice per stage after they've been introduced, and almost all of these work exactly how you'd expect them to. The drift is a drift, the stomp will send you straight down, the slide and crawl allow you to get on the small surfaces, and the double jump is most certainly a double jump. Not to mention the light speed dash is almost at its most responsive hands down in this game. And every other one that I've just listed works completely fine, except for two of them. See, this game's drift, as I said, is indeed functional, and on most corners it will work just fine, except for in Skyscraper Scamper and or Empire City Day. See, here at the very beginning of the level there's this one corner which you'll either take too sharply and fall into the pit, or you'll take too widely and fall into the pit. It's a prime example of the boost in this game. While being serviceable on most levels, this one corner just really wasn't tested. Like, why is there a gap here? And besides that though, it is only one corner that you have to drift on out of the entire game, but it is still a gripe that I have with the game nonetheless. The other move that doesn't make any damn sense is the air boost. See, once Sonic has this upgrade, it will almost entirely replace the air dash. As now when he has any ring energy, instead of just air dashing when square/X is pressed, he'll use the newer move if he has any ring energy, which is almost all the time. However, if he doesn't have any ring energy, he will just revert back to the regular air dash. See, What if I want air dash rather than air boost? The air dash could be useful for hitting platforms that may just be just out of reach that could the air dash hit, but if I was to use the boost, for example, I'd just overshoot by a large margin. Furthermore, the homing attack is on the same buttons to make it even more confusing, meaning that sometimes you'll be boosting to your death trying to kill an enemy when you want fully locks on. I'll get into those missions later, but let me tell you, when you're doing the hot dog mission time trials and accidentally boost into a pit because you're in a rush, it hurts. It's intermission time. I didn't expect to have to do one of these this late in, actually. I was expecting it to happen much earlier, but I didn't speak about rails, so pardon the kind of awkward introduction, but I gotta talk about rails in this game because they are very well done. Now, as part of Sonic's moveset, he can also grind on rails like he's been doing since What Adventure 2. It's nowhere near as finicky as it was in that game, Heroes, or any of the games before it in fact, and these rails actually work and they are amazing. They keep your speed, they serve as a great way to break up the level section, but most importantly are the controls used on these rails. No longer are you holding a direction and pressing the jump and hoping it works. These rails are the most responsive to switch between that they have ever been. All you've got to do is press the left or right back bumpers and he will go to the corresponding rail. I cannot stress how much I love this change, and it is a shock going back to old Sonic games to see how the rails don't have this feature. I can understand it on some older consoles where it may not have worked too well, and Heroes there are bearable, but playing 06 on the same console that this game is on, mind you, let me tell you, the way they changed the rails in this game, goddamn mind-blowing. Anyway, end of intermission. Besides those, the Stomp, White Speed Dash and War Drum all feel incredibly responsive and are really fun and convenient to use, especially when revisiting previous levels where you might not have had said power-ups when you initially played them, making them some really good replay value. In gameplay, you'll mostly be boosting through the 3D portions of Sonic's levels, and memorising little obstacles which will slow you down, which never helps when it comes to getting a better score or rank. In this game, it also incorporates the use of QTEs, and honestly, I think they're a nice break in the middle of the action. They never really overstay their welcome, there isn't too many of them, and they are quite forgiving in the sense that you get more than enough time for most of them, as long as your reactions are somewhat okay. Some of the later stages will have you dying if you mess them up, but most of the time it's just complete the QTE and you'll take a slightly higher or easier path. There is also the occasional 3D platforming segment, most prominently in Chundan's day stage. Here Sonic still has all of his 3D moves, but using the boost is almost entirely out of the question unless your objective is to head to the bottom of a bottomless pit. Sonic retains the speed he has in the other 3D sections of the level, which can make the thought of potentially slipping and over or undershooting a jump ever so more prominent. By far, these are the sections which killed me the most since they offer the most challenge. It's a nice balance of platforming speed and difficulty, and they luckily only last for about 15 seconds if you know what you're doing and avoid dying, though they can get quite difficult. If the 3D sections have exhausted their stay for you, luckily for you there are a few more things on offer. Once you get bored of the 3D sections, luckily this game has plenty of 2D sections to try and split up the gameplay. These are slower, though they don't feel like they slow down the gameplay, and have a much heavier emphasis on very simple puzzles, minor platforming, mainly the wall jump. There's a lot of wall jumping in these, and overall, I know a lot of people aren't too big a fan of 2D in their modern Sonic games, especially since in recent entries it hasn't been implemented too well, but I think it's done quite well. They allow you for a moment to slow down, maybe grab a couple of collectibles if there is any, and I understand they are needed to extend the stages because while they are already massive, the speed of which Sonic goes through some of these stages is absolutely asinine, so it does make sense why they're here, and I do like their inclusion, even though, later on Sonic Team saw the success that these levels had and did butcher them into something much else. Again, it doesn't feel like you're playing a classic Sonic game, and none of the acts are fully 2D except some of the extra acts, and even then they're a lot more better designed, and they wouldn't work if they were 3D, and again, they're not full-length stages where you're in 2D, they're like, at most 1 to 2 minute endeavours. The final staple of the daytime stages are the automated set pieces. These are classed as any section where you control the blue blur is either non-existent or very limited. One half of these would be sections like grinding on the clock tower and rooftop run or running along the Whale and Cool Legend. While these look cool, you can't really do anything to, influence them, I suppose. And then there's the other half, where you have a bit too much control, and meet the Interceptor and his cohorts A, B and C, because in these sections Sonic is restricted to 3 lanes where he'll either be grinding and quick-stepping to jump or avoid over oncoming obstacles such as bombs, gaps, missiles and lasers, and while I don't mind the sections where you're running towards 3 of Eggman's robots and trying to deal with them by firing other robots at them, and I think there are great ways to end certain levels like Rooftop Run, the Interceptor is just conceptually frustrating. Like I said, I can appreciate breaks in the regular gameplay in place of a temporary change of pace, but this is just frustrating. Appearing in Chunnan, Adabat and Empire City, as well as the Missouri DLC act, the Interceptor acts as a mini-boss of the day stages. It has the option to fire a laser in either lane 1, 2 or 3, which makes Sonic have to ship in lanes to avoid it. It can also hit the ground to cause a shockwave attack which will force you to jump no matter which lane you're in, and it can finally do a melee attack if you lose enough speed or get too slow. On top of this, bombs will spawn ahead of Sonic, giving a little marker to indicate which lane they'll appear in, causing him to also have to quick tech to avoid them. This sets up some scenarios, and believe me, there's a lot of them, where Sonic can be forced into the left or right lane, only for a laser to then be fired in said lane, giving no choice but to be hit. Now, each bomb and attack does have an indicator for when it's due to happen, and bombs are in a predetermined location for each level, but the fact you're running towards the camera and can only be told of oncoming bombs one set at a time, coupled with the randomness of attacks and high-speed nature of these sections, can all culminate in something which feels extremely unfair, especially in missions which involve you having to avoid damage to make it to the goal with a certain number of rings. In fact, I much prefer the Wii version of this mini-boss, as this version actually gives you a chance to destroy the enemy, and there's also no bombs, which is a big plus. On a different note, upon finishing the level, any enemies you defeated will have given you XP, which can be used to level either of Sonic's stats. Ring and speed energy, leveling up speed increases how fast Sonic can go, whereas leveling ring energy will increase just how fast Sonic can boost, and just how much he gets per ring. I actually like this feature. I think it's something unique to this game, and it gives you a reason to replay levels so that you get a faster time. And I certainly wouldn't mind seeing it again some other time as long as it's handled as it is here. In conclusion, the day stages are genuinely great. They're extremely fun, they balance everything a Sonic game should have while never having a dull moment, that's for sure. But while there is some questionable button mashing, stranger moves, and even more confusing mini-bosses that do bring these stages down from being perfect, I still believe these are the best boost stages, and even some of the best Sonic stages we've had just far. If you can look past those few moments in each stage where something will randomly get you killed or you may need to slow down because it wasn't tested, they're fine. And believe me, those moments are few and far between. In my entire playthrough, there was 4 times out of 9 levels in the day stages where I thought that was unfair. Which, considering the runtime of these levels is upwards of an hour, that is actually most likely less than half a minute. Again, the things I've listed aren't that bad, though they can be frustrating. Again, 4 times, and 3 of those with the stupid interceptor. And then the sun goes down, and with it so does Sonic's speed, introducing the Werehog, which has somehow gained the miraculous ability to tear through gloves and then have them reappear the very next morning, and for some reason switch out shoes. Right, okay, I'm getting into his design. This is Sonic Team's spin on the God of War formula, and unlike regular Sonic's levels, these levels have one main route with only a few side rooms and a much greater emphasis on puzzle solving, combat and platforming. Introduced with the new playstyles and extensive list of combat moves, the ability to hang and swing and bounce on ledges, the option to sprint on all fours, a shield which can be activated to block oncoming attacks, a life bar which can be replenished with rings, and an unleashed gorge which will inactivatable increase Sonic's damage output and also reduce the damage he takes for a short time. You can also grab enemies with the same button used to grab ledges if they're stunned, and you can use this to either throw them into any manner of objects, including other enemies. You can also do a regular swipe attack with square or X, and the more punch-oriented attack move with triangle or Y. You can join attacks together and even mix in the jump and grab buttons to dish out some serious damage and pull off some extremely impressive combos. Combat and platforming with the Werehog is much easier than it is with daytime Sonic. With its reduced speed and lack of air boost, when you die in these levels it's almost always going to be because of your own shortcomings, rather than the gameplay hiccup that could happen in the day stages. Similar to Day Sonic, you can also level up the Werehog with XP. On the menu this time we've got Combat, which will unlock more moves, Strength, which increases the damage of said attacks, Life, which will increase your life bar, Shield, which increases the effectiveness of your shield, and Unleashed, which will increase how long your Unleashed meter takes to run out and how big it can get. On the topic of Unleashed mode, you're filled up by destroying scenery, beating enemies, and more so when you pull off a quick QTE finisher on an enemy successfully. There's a lot more to play with here than there is Day Sonic, and I'd bet that this is where the majority of your XP is going to go, since the later Werehog stages can get really difficult if you don't level him up. It also means that you're more so able to focus on traits that you personally need or want more of because of the variety, which is something I can appreciate since different playstyles will warrant different priorities in leveling up. The stages, as I said before, will mostly have you defeating waves of enemies to progress to the next area, and solving simple but sometimes confusing puzzles in order to progress with a lot of platforming in between. Now, a lot of people say that the combat in this game is bad, and that simply isn't the case. If you were to go in this game either a button masher or someone who wants to memorise combos, either playstyle is suited for here. Mashing buttons after leveling up your combo just means you'll unknowingly pull off better combos, whereas memorising certain combos can most certainly give you an advantage in some platforming segments, phasing out of bound, wait no, and defeating enemies. I personally would recommend learning the drill attack. All you've got to do is be running, press square or A, and then press the triangle and or Y button, and you'll pull a nice drill attack which will really damage some enemies, especially when you're first arriving into a battle. You also get the option to pick up enemies when the day sun knocks out, as I mentioned before, and you can use that to throw them off the edge, throw them into other enemies, or smash them into every nearby surface, which is pretty amusing. You can also perform finishes on every enemy. These are mini optional quick time events which, if completed correctly, will instantly kill the enemy. The less health it has, the more time you get. If you fail, Sonic will fail whatever move he's attempting and lose some of his health while the enemy will regain some of its own. Doing this grants you a score bonus, so if QTEs are your thing, then I suggest you'd have a blast with these, though again they are entirely optional. Moving on, there's also a mini-boss, just like in the day stages, only this one is a lot more fair. Meet the Big Mother, an enemy so menacing it gets its own battle music. It has a lot of health, it has a club, and it sure as hell has a shockwave attack that the Sonic team just couldn't help themselves. They do pose a nice challenge, though I wish there was more than just 2 variants of this in the whole game because of how frequently they show up. Thankfully, these bosses are a lot easier to deal with than the day mini bosses are. All you've got to do is beat the hell out of them like you would with any other enemy. Sure, they have more damage for attacks, and they have a boatload of health, but all you've got to do is beat the hell out of them and they're gone. No quick stepping, no bombs, it's just a regular enemy with a bunch of health. On other levels, they are incorporated really well, I have to say. Now, I know I keep mentioning this, but Skyscraper Scamper Knight does this so perfectly. See, the previously mentioned shockwave attack can actually be used to send Sonic flying off the edge of a building. I personally think that's pretty funny and is a pretty cool way to use the boss. Other people think it's a pain in the ass, and yeah, the outtakes from that series speak for themselves though. Sadly, they're irretraceable since I lost all the raw files when my PC died. Though I swear to God, if I could share those videos of me screaming into a mic for about 20 seconds after dying to one of these things, I sure as hell would. Again, they can be rage-inducing, but they're meant to be that way. And the way that they're used in the game is really, really clever, though again, I just wish there was more of them. Finally, it's the platforming, and oh boy, is this a rabbit hole. The Werehog surprisingly has 5 different platforming segments. You've got platforms, which is jumping from platform to platform. You've got swinging, which involves you swinging off poles to move along or up a wall. You've got poles, which you climb. You've got bars in which you shimmy along a bar with varying obstacles along it. And most infamously, you've got balancing, which involves balancing on a beam. Now, whereas the others remain mostly the same in their mechanics, balancing infamously gets harder the further into the game you get. Initially, if you were to fall, you can just grab onto the beam and continue, like grab a little surface. Later, you wouldn't be able to do this, and it mean you'd have to redo a section of the level. And then in Empire City, some madman puts spikes on the beams and put them over a bottomless pit, meaning if you slip, not only do you lose your health, but 9 out of 10 times you won't be able to double jump back to safety because you've just got stabbed and will be stunned. Not only that, but in the same level, certain beams will also fall into the void after a certain time after you've begun walking on them, so have fun taking your time. And let me tell you, the difficulty spike can be rage-inducing for this one level, especially 30 minutes into a level. Oh yeah, did I not mention that? See, while Day Sonic's levels are at most 8 minutes if you die a couple times and maybe slow down every now and then to grab a collectible, the Werehog's levels can range from about 5 to 10 minutes or so if you're going through without collecting anything and skipping the majority of the enemies, while if you're going through trying to find as many things as you can and killing most of the enemies for the XP, it can max out at about half an hour to 40 minutes. Again, Eggmanland being an exception, being the longest stage in the game, this means that Skyscraper Scamper Knight is most likely going to take the cake for taking the longest. Now, the Werehog bad because level long, too much combat is a sentence even the monkeys at my local zoo know is too dumb to muster, because it's factually incorrect. Yes, the levels are longer than daytime Sonic levels, and that's because they're meant to be. This is a slower version of Sonic, so it makes sense that he takes longer to go from A to B. Now, I personally think that every Werehog level is just the perfect length. It doesn't overstay its welcome. 10 to 20 minute level is justified because these levels, I dare say, are fun. Let's take the night act of Rooftop Run for example. The level is split up like this. You have one large set piece, that being the clock tower at the very end, one platforming segment, that being inside the clock tower, 2 mini bosses, 3 puzzle segments, 3 sections where you can explore and collect collectibles, and 4 unskippable enemy waves and 2 skippable enemy waves. That's it, that's the level. It takes 15 minutes if I'm looking for collectibles and don't die, and there's enough variation in the scenery and sections of the level that I personally don't get bored. That's right, a Werehog level takes a measly 15 minutes. If I'm looking for stuff. On subsequent playthroughs, it gets a lot less. Some levels like Applesauce can be cut down to 5 minutes if you make a beeline for the goal, and if you say that this doesn't belong in a Sonic game, then I can see your point. Most of these games are about going fast after all. And however, if you were to call these levels and this gameplay idea bad, while I can understand they may not be your preference, then you're just wrong, because it's executed as perfectly as it could be. These levels are the perfect length, and I am proud to say that yes, these levels may not be for everyone, but they are from an objective standpoint good, and are subjectively fun to a lot more people. I think I'm in the right when I say that not everyone is going to enjoy the change in gameplay for the Werehog levels, and I can understand that people have different tastes in what they'll enjoy in a game, but I personally enjoyed these levels, and I'm glad to see that people have begun to be more open online about liking this game in recent years. There's just one problem. See, the team working on this game decided to give the Werehog some battle music for when he's fighting enemies. How much music did they give him? 2 tracks. In a game with so many and such variety in tracks, they gave the Werehog 2 battle tracks. One track will play when you fight the Big Mother mini-boss, and it's fine, but it's 100% one of the lesser tracks in the game. And then there's the regular battle theme. Plays every single time he is even seen by an enemy. And considering the amount of enemies in these levels, even the skippable ones, the track will play at least 8 to 10 times per level, and it gets repetitive. Who? Why? How? Who signed off on this? It interrupts some much better night music in every single level besides Eggmanland. I'm not sure why they thought this was a good idea. If the music was a variation of the regular music, it would be fine. But here it's the same track unless you're encountering either a boss or a mini-boss, and I cannot stress this enough. Okay, I'm gonna calm down, because I just edited that and this is an insert. It is not as obnoxious as I have just made it out to be with those edits. I promise. It is the same volume as all the other crap, even though people make it out to be almost some form of ear rape. It's not that bad, but just why? Especially in levels where I'm enjoying the music, I cannot stress this enough. I dread running into enemies. Luckily, some levels, specifically Rooftop Run Night, have large sections where you can hear this music when you're exploring. I think every level does have some form of section where you can at least listen to the majority of the stuff before the battle music kicks back in, and again, it's not as bad as some people have it out to be, but it's not so much frustrating, but it's just a shame that this is the case. Imagine if we got to listen to either the normal music while this played, or if it didn't play at all, it was a variation of the regular music, or there was just a few more tracks. It would be so much more bearable, so the fact that they missed an opportunity here just hurts all the more, because I really, really like this game. But I've got to go with the majority on this one. This music can get pretty repetitive in some later levels, but again, it is not overbearing as it is. It's just a shame more than anything. The amount of times this plays. Take Savannah Citadel, for example. In a section of the level where there isn't actually meant to be any enemies and it's more so platforming based and more puzzle based, there is a section where you've got to grab one of those little green demonic dogs and throw it at a button to activate a platform. And while the nice level music is playing for this, the moment that you grab the dog, it kicks in again, which is a massive shame because I'm a massive fan of the nighttime music, but a lot of the time this is just playing. If they were to ever re-release the game, how I would handle it if they aren't going to make new music tracks for each level, which could make it a lot less repetitive, they could change how it plays. For example, say a lot of the enemies in this game are actually skippable. You do not end up fighting as many enemies as you think, as long as you know which you can skip and which you can't, which is heavily marked out by those pink walls that will come up if you've got to defeat a certain set of enemies. Having maybe the battle music just play in these areas rather than areas where you can skip the enemies, I think would be a nice change, because it means, hey, this is an actual battle rather than I'm just going to run past and try and continue. It would make the thing a whole lot less repetitive by reducing the amount of times it played, though it still wouldn't be perfect. And while I can understand why this annoys people, personally I don't actually notice it playing in the game, and if I do I'm completely fine with it, though I can understand why people find the repetition annoying, so I have to include it. However, one thing that I have to disprove about this is that a lot of people make this track to be a lot more louder and obnoxious than it is, and while it can definitely seem that way after it has been played so many times, it is not as loud as some people, namely Game Grumps, will make it out to be. It is a perfectly fine piece of music, it just gets overplayed a little too much for my liking. Okay, so the Werehog is mostly done. Again, there's a lot of stuff that I have missed off. I could go and speak for multiple hours about how great this game is, though this section's already 17 minutes long, jeez. So the Werehog is done, so I might as well touch on the Tornado Station. These are very rare. They only appear twice in the game, and they're essentially an on-rails QTE shooter. You press the correct buttons, you'll kill these little enemy drones that Eggman will stand after you. Each time you press the button, your energy meter will drain, and running out will leave you defenseless until it recharges, leaving you open to take damage. At the end you'll have a mini-boss fight with Eggman's Egg Cauldron, and you've got to clear all the enemies before you can attack him by spamming the button 5 times, so if you want to grade these QTE segments I could see them being a pain. Luckily they only appear once or twice, once on the way to Spagonia, and the other time when you're going on your way to Eggmanland. I personally think they offer a nice challenge, especially if you're aiming to go through them without being hit once for the PSN achievement, and I'm mostly indifferent to them. They exist, mainly just to break up the way that the stages were laid out, which is just go from one stage, complete the other stage, and then move on. I can appreciate them, they don't overstay the welcome, they only appear twice, they're the perfect length, and they keep you engaged enough. If you were to put your control down, you would fail on them, which is, you know, they offer an okay challenge. They're nothing that's going to make you throw your controller across the room. Like I said, if you're not so good with QTEs, it might take you like 1 or 2 tries to maybe defeat the boss at the end, but they're generous enough on both run-throughs to where they shouldn't really be a big deal. They serve to break up the game, and I can appreciate that, though these are definitely the stages I'm going to be revisiting the least. unless I'm getting that aforementioned achievement. They're good is what I'm trying to say, but I don't see myself revisiting them anytime soon. I'd much rather play my least favourite day or night stage than these. They don't have a lot of substance to them, there's a lot less to do here, it's just a very on-rails thing, but I wouldn't call them bad, I'd just say that they're a nice inclusion. The game would be just fine without them, but the fact that they did go and include them just makes the game that tiny marginal bit better. But Neremik, I hear you cry, what are the bosses like in this game? Well, I'm glad you asked. Just like the regular stages, bosses are split into day and night stages. The day bosses, consisting of the Egg Beetle, Egg Devil, Ray and Egg Lancer, are all on-rails bosses in which Sonic will need to boost into the robot when it's open to attacks to damage it. All three bosses have incredibly similar attacks, though each fight does add some form of new element to keep you on your toes. Especially the Egg Lancer. Do watch out for those quick time event segments as you're about to finish a lap of the arena. Those are an interesting addition nonetheless, and if you're prepared, you may very well end up falling to your death there. Overall, they're fun, they're easy enough, and they can still be difficult if you're underprepared, but they're overall very good time. I really like these bosses, and I'm glad they brought some form of them back in Sonic Colors in the terms of those two kind of airship bosses. And then there's the Werehog bosses. I personally also very much like these. Consisting of the Dark Gaia Phoenix, Dark Guardian, Dark Moray, and the Egg Dragoon, these bosses take much longer than the other fights, and typically have some form of puzzle attached to them before you can damage the enemy. For example, you've got to extinguish the Phenom with Tuner or Water Barrels before you can hit it, you've got to move blocks into place to hit the Guardian, and you've got to kill the Moray's minions and then freeze it in place so it's easier to kill. The only exception to this is the Egg Dragoon, which can be hit as long as it's close enough to the platform for Sonic to hit. I like these bosses. The combination of puzzles and quick time events which come accompanied with some of the breathtaking visuals make these bosses worth remembering. You'd be lying if you didn't find the ending to the Egg Dragoon fight cool after all. Yep, that's right, quick time events are much more prevalent in the nighttime bosses than they are the day bosses, though they're still pretty easy. For example, each time that you'll damage a boss, you may need to input just a couple of commands. It's mostly just spamming one button though, so don't fear about it. And I have to say, these animations and the choreography look absolutely amazing. Slamming the Dark Gaia Phoenix into the floor, dodging some of the Dark Guardian's attacks, then deal some of my own damage. And you'd be lying if you said you didn't find the ending of the Egg Dragoon cool. All these boss fights in the game are absolutely worth remembering. They are some of the best boss fights I think I've ever seen in Sonic's history. I know I keep sounding like a broken record, but again, this game's amazing. Bosses are definitely one of the highlights of this game, though. Later in the review I am going to have a more in-depth look at Dark Gaia than the rest of the bosses, because I do think it deserves that treatment and comparisons to the Wii version. And by the way, bosses in this version and the Wii version are all pretty much exactly identical, so there's no need to worry about if you're missing out on these amazing bosses. They are all still present. But yeah, that's bosses. Definitely a good point of the game, but let's move on to the stage breakdown. With a game as big as Sonic Unleashed, I think it's fair that I give the general gist of each stage along with my own thoughts, because otherwise I would not be doing the settings that this game goes through justice. So, in no particular order, or at least a very rough order, I present a very brief explanation of every day and night stage in the game. Main acts only, I'll do bonus acts later. Windmill Isle, based off of areas in Greece. The day stage is the only day Sonic stage to have 2 acts of which you'll need to complete. Act 1 is a very short tutorial stage of Sonic's basic moveset, and Act 2 is a blast not only gameplay but aesthetics from beginning to end. This is many people's favourite day stage in the game, and it's clear to see why. The night level is a pretty short 10 to 15 minute level depending on how good you are at clearing groups of enemies. Again, it's basically just the basic introduction to the Werehog like this whole area is, and it still looks absolutely stunning in the moonlight. Savannah Citadel, based off somewhere in Africa. The day stage is still pretty easy, and it is a good introduction to the drift. Some of the controls on the swinging bars can be a bit iffy at times, but besides that, it is still a fun level. The night stage, on the other hand, is somewhat less fun. It's slightly longer than Windmill Isle stage, with a fair amount more puzzles involved too. There's a constant wave of enemies at the end, which is pretty frustrating, but on the whole, it's okay. Rooftop Run, based off many of EU countries, this day stage is a rush the whole way through, and is easily one of the best levels in Sonic's history. It also introduces the wall jumps, so that gets bonus points. The night stage is one of the best nighttime stages in the whole damn game, and it's just the perfect land for a Werehog level. There's plenty of exploration, the setting is just beautiful, there's just the right amount of enemies that you need to defeat, and you'd be lying if you said you didn't find that clock tower set piece at the very end cool. Cool Edge, based off of Antarctica and Greenland. The day stage has some pretty good set pieces, such as the whale and bobsled sections, which I found quite unique. Just watch out for the random spikes and bottomless pits that crop up along the level's runtime. It also introduces the Stomp, which is one of the best abilities in this game, and it's also among the most responsive. The night stage. I've got a lot to say about this. This place has heavily creepy vibes, and there's probably the most platforming here than in any other stage. One of the longer stages, and it can overstay its welcome if you take your time to grab every collectible. What I like about this level is that when you do any form of attack, the Werehog is going to slide along the ice quite naturally. and with certain arenas being surrounded by water or the void, it gives this level a unique little twist, since button mashing can and will send you to your death if you're not careful. Dragon Road, heavily China themed. The day stage is where the air boost is introduced, so have fun boosting to your death a few times while you get used to it, and it's also the first appearance of the Interceptor, which I'm sure you know I love. There's a lot of 3D platforming here, and there are some points where you're certainly going to die on a first run through, but it's still a good level. The night stage, on the other hand, is an easy and short level, albeit for those stupid wasp enemies. It's even the shortcut to skip a large portion of the level, which I can get down with. This is the best Werehog level, but just don't fall in the water, okay? Most of this level is fine, but there's a certain section towards the end in which most people agree jumping on those damn crates will drive you to insanity if you're not careful, so bring a couple extra lives just for that one portion, and besides that, good stage. Empire City, we're going into the USA. The day stage, it lags in more active areas and is one of the few day stages to actually feature a major shortcut. The Lightspeed Dash is also introduced here, and there's definitely a nice balance of speed, platforming and exploration if that's your thing in a Sonic level. There's also him, who makes an appearance, but this is still one of the better day stages regardless. Right, you know how I said Cool Hedge had the most platforming? I lied. This level will give you either PTSD, a fear of heights, or, if you're me, Stockholm Syndrome. One wrong move and you're falling to your death, so stock up on lives and buckle in for the longest Werehog level in the game. 35 minutes, who in their right mind? Arid Sands, Savannah Citadel, but we've gone to the Middle East. The day level is fast, even when you take slower routes. There's a few dumb or unfair sections. I dare say this is the worst day stage since it's so similar to what came before it in terms of aesthetics. It's just a little too difficult for my liking. This also wasn't helped with the inclusion of an achievement where you've got to clear this level in something like 2 minutes and 40 or 50 seconds, and dear god. The night stage, if you know, you know. This level's main feature is an endless barrage of enemies if you decide to go up a certain set of stairs. The item you'll be looking for at this point in the level isn't actually up there, it's just hidden far too well, and I feel sorry for the amount of people who got a game over 20 minutes in the level thanks to that design choice. There is a cool out of bounds area at the end though, so check it out once you're done watching this video. Jungle Joyride, Southeast Asia never looked so good. Day. This is the hardest regular Sonic level in the game. Constant changes between boosting on water, that thing, 3D and 2D platforming all mixed together to make one of the most visually stunning stages in the game. Just be wary of the fact that it lags quite a bit. Night. It's a nice test of skill to when the night stage is on. It's pretty bittersweet because this is the final time you'll actually be properly playing as a Werehog. It can be pretty long and there's a lot of enemies, and it can lag from time to time because of the amount of enemies that spawn here, but I think at this point you'll really be able to appreciate everything that goes into making the level what it is, and like I said, the fact that it's a final nighttime level and it's done so well is just a testament to how much care went into this game. However, there is one more level I'm missing, and with its boss, I'm yet to cover them both. That's right, once you've beaten every stage leading up until this point, restored all but one of the world's continents, you arrive at Eggmanland. This level is different in the sense that instead of being split into a day and night stage, though this is the case in the unWIIshed version, it's one long continuous level where you'll actively switch between Sonic and the Werehog 3 times each. This is the hardest Sonic level. It's one 40 to 90 minute troll through a literal hellscape in level design on the first run through. You've got a bobsled from hell, waves upon waves of enemies, multiple mini-bosses, 2D platforming which are set pieces to push you off the 2D plane and a pretty funny fourth wall break, and last but not least, a final boss that rivals Arid Sands in levels of difficulty. I can't stress this enough, Eggmanland is a goddamn massacre. God help you if you game over midway through this level. Luckily for your sanity, the Werehog battle theme doesn't play here, and it shows just how big of a shame it is that it has to play so much in the normal night levels. This is by far the most memorable stage in any Sonic game, and it shows. This is Eggmanland. It's not meant to be fair for Sonic. Each party at this point in the story is trying just as hard to keep the other party from achieving their goal, and I can admit, this level will make you rage, and it's meant to. The feeling of completing this for this first time is something I'll never forget. Now, does this level get easier on subsequent run-throughs? Yes, but it is still insanely difficult, okay? I've seen people grind this level down to 15 minutes without dying, and again, we're gonna get into the hot dog missions later, but let me tell you, those ones that are tied to this mission, oh boy. Now, after completing the regular stage, you'll be given the option to save before you take on the Egg Dragoon, which I mentioned earlier. Now, remember that, it's important. This is hands down the best Werehog boss. There's no puzzles, the thing is just pure spectacle from beginning to end. So as you fall towards the centre of the earth, it's an easy enough boss if you've been levelling up his stats throughout the game, but be warned that this fight is full of quick time events. One wrong button press and you'll have to attempt the sequence all over again, though they are quite lenient on the timing. if you manage to pull off these QTEs successfully, you'll be able to defeat an absolutely amazing looking fight with even greater visuals to boot. It still offers a decent enough challenge, it's not as long as the Dark Guardian fight can be, and it's just perfect. As for Dark Gaia, let's get into it. Dark Gaia has 3 phases. Phase 1 has you controlling Chip in the Gaia Colossus, a giant Megazord-like thing made of the Gaia Temples. You'll be boosting towards Dark Gaia as he throws rocks at you and fires his laser from time to time. You'll do this 3 times, with an increase in the rate of attacks and distance each time. Chip can block and punch to try and counteract the projectiles and laser, and once you reach him you'll have a brief QTE section, which is successful, you move on to stage 2. If not, you're sent all the way back to the beginning and have to repeat. And I have to say, this is my main gripe with this boss. See, this, while it's easy on the first and second time, and the things are in a predetermined location, the problem comes in Phase 3. He attacks far too frequently. If anything, Phase 3 should be slightly more difficult Phase 2, and that should have been it, but no, he attacks way too frequently. Sometimes you have barely seconds to press that dodge button, and it's a nightmare. Eventually, though, you will make it if you know what you're doing, though just remember that there may be some memorization involved, and I have to do dock a couple points for that. Anyway, once you've passed Phase 1, you move into Phase 2, where you control regular day Sonic 3 times. These are small daytime-like areas, which you'll have to complete within a pretty strict time limit. There's a lot of obstacles, and chances are you'll lose quite a few lives on the final little level. Once you've finished the platforming segment, you'll have another QTE sequence, which, if completed, will take out one of Dark Gaia's eyes. I don't mind these segments. Again, they're supposed to make you rage. This is the final boss after all, and you can really tell that the difficulty was meant to be amped up here. After completing both of the first 2 phases 3 times, we move on to Phase 3, also known as Perfect Dark Gaia. This involves Sonic becoming Supersonic using the Chaos Emeralds. Now, here Dark Gaia gains a bunch more arms, he can summon these tentacle things to make a force field, don't question it. And I have to say, if 7-year-old me was scared by the regular appearance of this guy, then 8-year-old me, because yes, it's going to be that long to beat this boss, was basically sent running. Anyway, in this boss fight, you'll begin by boosting towards Dark Gaia in his force field, collecting rings to fill up your own life gauge. Once you arrive, Chip will enter through the force field, because apparently he's able to do that. Again, don't question it, there's a lot of this story that I cut out, okay? Anyway, so you have to take out those things that are making the force field so you can get in there and help him. While this is happening, Chip will be fighting Dark Gaia within the force field and will progressively be losing health, so you're basically on a very strict time limit, because if you or Chip dies, you're straight back to the beginning. While this is happening, for the most part you're not being attacked, however occasionally Dark Gaia will either try to fire his laser at you or throw a couple of rocks at you. Again, it's nothing too major and I doubt you're actually going to die much, it's mainly Chip who's doing most of the dying here, but do be warned that can slow you down, and that these tentacle things will pop in and out of the force field, meaning that sometimes you'll have to wait for some of them to come out. Once that's done, however, you'll enter the final QTE segment. You've got to do 6 one-button QTEs to take the Dark Gaia's arms off Chip, and then you're in for the long haul. This is a QTE segment worth remembering, okay? You've got to mash either square or X 60 times in about 10 seconds in order to block Dark Gaia's laser before sending a punch flying into a Chip. This leaves Sonic to boost to his brain, and the boss ends. Now, I know a lot of people aren't fans of the final boss here, but personally, I love it, okay? This boss is difficult, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me on that. It's meant to be difficult, and it feels like the perfect conclusion. The music here, the visuals, everything is just so well done, and honestly I commend Sonic Team for making such a good finale to such a good game. Especially the quick time events, they really make this for me. I know not everyone's a big fan of them, and I can understand that people give this game different ratings because of the quick time events, but personally, as someone who's never really struggled with them, and personally finds them just fine in any game, as long as they fit. It's a challenging but accomplishable way to finish a boss fight of this scale, and once that's done, it's over. The game is done, and you get to see the credits roll. So what do I think of this level and the Dark Gaia fight? Well, there's one problem. You see how I mentioned earlier that upon beating Eggmanland and before fighting the Egg Dragoon you get to save? Yeah. See, after beating the fight you also get the option to save, but that means that if you were to game over at any point, either in the Egg Dragoon or in the Dark Gaia fights, you're being sent straight back to Eggman and his Egg Dragoon. Be sure to stock up on lives, since this is a pretty questionable design decision on the developers' halves, and while the Dragoon isn't too hard to take down, when I was recording footage of this game having to redo it was a little bit tedious, even though it still looks great as ever. But besides that, I like it. Eggmanland is hell, and it's meant to be. I like the challenge, it's truly the best final stage in any Sonic game, and the fact there's no battle music there is just a cherry on the cake for this stage. The lack of drop shadow in some areas can be annoying as hell, and coming in underprepared is 100% gonna give you a few more grey hairs. But that's what makes this level good. They gave Sonic Team free reign to make the hardest level they can imagine, and this is what they came up with. It's not the best stage in the game by far, but it still doesn't mean that it's not good. And as for Dark Gaia, he's okay. The first 2 phases are a bit too hard, and the final phase is a little too easy. If they could have balanced them out just a little bit more, it would be perfect, but as a final game challenge, this set of a level and a boss works just fine. So in all, are the levels in this game good? They're great. There's a bunch of variety between each level, there's a mostly fair and understandable difficulty curve which complements the leveling system perfectly, since while you'll constantly be getting faster and stronger, that doesn't mean you'll just be able to cheese these levels if you max out your strength and speed. The harder levels are always going to be hard, and I like the fact that they didn't make the game a complete cakewalk after you've maxed out your skills. This game has a bunch of replay value, especially with the collectibles, which I'll get into later. It's a perfectly constructed game, and the only letdown I have is that Arid Sands just feels lacking compared to the rest. I know I said this in the individual thing, but it's just too similar to Savannah Citadel. Both of them have sand and are really open areas. The only difference is that Arid Sands has a different track, somewhat different scenery, and has annoying as hell people in the road that you can hit from time to time. But besides that, this game has amazing level design. Again, even Arid Sands isn't bad, it's just a shame that they used a very similar setting to one that they did earlier in the game. Seriously though, I cannot stress this enough, the levels in this game are amazing. Even Arid Sands, which while it feels repetitive, is still a good level. The only level I dare say would even border on being mediocre would be the night stage of that area. Seriously, I'm going to say this now and I'm going to say it at the end of the review. If you are lucky enough to get your hands on a copy of this game, then you sure as hell will have an absolute blast with it as long as you're able to just enjoy the game for what it is. Okay, so how do I access these levels, you may ask? Hub Worlds! Much like Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed makes use of Hub Worlds. Each in-game area has its own Hub World where you can grab collectibles, talk to pedestrians, get side quests. They're the perfect size so that you can explore and find more hidden items, but they're not too big so that you'll ever be lost. I like how either form of Sonic, you can interact with the environments by either slashing and jumping on the pots and boxes, and hell, doing that might even let you a collectible or two. And there's the small things as well, like in Spagonia you can hear some guy in the shower singing the tune from the game's teaser trailer, which is just such a cool feature they didn't have to include, but they did anyway. The only hub I'd say was too big was Shamar. That's pretty big, but in all honesty, the serious graphical effects that are on display here, and honestly the mix of music, graphics and atmosphere really makes these places something special. They feel so unique, and it's just a shame that more Sonic games haven't had them because the last 2 games that have used them got bad reviews. And that's a shame because these hub worlds are not as big as the ones that were in Sonic 06, and were not as unclear as to navigate as the ones in Sonic Adventure 1. These are how hub worlds should be done in a Sonic game. There's just so much to do here. You could sit here and just randomly go around talking to villagers, maybe pick up a side quest or 2 and you'd still have a great time. Oh yeah, this game is also chock full of side quests. Some of these may require you to find an item hidden in the hub world and bring it back to a certain villager, do a quiz about the local area, complete a small portion of a stage with a random objective, beat a small set of enemies or go into another country to buy an item for a villager, and I like their inclusion. Like I said, I've been playing through recently to get a full view of the game and they're honestly just such a cool addition. Most of them are pretty easy, and it's just nice because you can find extra things in there as well that you wouldn't have noticed if you're actually just playing for the main story. It just breathes something extra, it makes these villages feel much more alive, and that's even furthered by the fact that certain villages will have mini little side stories that progress as you go through the game. The other type of side quest is exorcisms, where the Werehog will take a photo of someone at night who's seemingly been possessed by Dark Gaia and is acting a bit crazy. In these missions you'll complete a short beat 'em up section in the hub world, and once completed they'll return to their normal selves at night rather than being possessed. They don't overstay the welcome, and there's just the right amount of them so that you don't need to go looking for every single one, and I dare say all the villagers cheering me on from the sidelines is wholesome as hell. As well as the regular humans that you can interact with, each village also has its own shop where you can buy souvenirs to give to Professor Pickle. In exchange for this, he'll give you random items, small tidbits of world-building information, and some random gameplay information if you're ever being lost. Also sold in the shop in the hub worlds are music tracks and previous cutscenes for you to view back at the lab given you've got the correct equipment. Last but not least, there's food. A lot of food. You can give these with either Sonic or Chip. Sonic will gain XP for each food eaten, and feeding Chip certain foods in certain areas can unlock hidden cutscenes and reward you with even more collectibles. These are the best hub worlds in any Sonic game. These are how they're meant to be executed. The humans will look like they belong here, all of these hub worlds are stunning and aren't too big, and the small things really do make them a highlight in the game. On top of the regular town areas, entrance stages also make a return in this game. These are typically small hub areas where you'll discover new stages, kind of Sonic Adventure style. Here's where you're mostly going to be getting the majority of Sonic's power-ups for the day stages, and honestly I like them. I know some people think they're kind of pointless, and I will agree Sonic is slightly hard to control in here, but again, it just makes this game feel so much grander in scale. It really feels like you're going on this world adventure, some would dare say. And you know, personally, I like the fact that someone went through the effort to actually add these into the game, and it's just a testament to how ambitious and how much love is in this game. These hub worlds are the ones that belong in a Sonic game, and they add to the experience. I will say though, that if you aren't a fan of them despite all these features, you do get the option of a stage select to access any stage you've already completed if you're in a rush. I personally like the hub worlds in Sonic Unleashed, and I wish that they made some form of return in the next game. I'm not buying the game just for the hub worlds, but they are certainly something that improve the game on the whole. But on the topic of things you can do in hub worlds, we're over 7,000 words into this review, and I've made a point not to mention these yet, so it seems now is a good time. Sun and Moon medals, the things that supposedly ruin this game for so many people. So previously mentioned in the hub worlds, you can find these medals hiding in slightly hidden areas. They're not so much well hidden, you've just got to go looking and you'll find them. They're also in the day, night and boss stages too, with the only exceptions being Wind the Lilacs 1 as it's a tutorial stage, the Tornado stages, and anything after Adabat's day stage, aka Eggmanland, and all the boss fights that come after that. In the day stages, they are not as hard as some people will have you think to collect. If you were to get a QTE correct, take a faster route, or pay attention in 2D sections, you'll come across medals in basically any scenario you can think of. But Sonic go too fast for medal, I can hear IGN say? Ah yes, the same review company that didn't get past Empire City's levels before making a review. Okay, shut the fuck up. Okay, now, before I get into why I think the medals are perfectly fine in this game, and are actually a somewhat decent addition, I'm gonna get into what I used to think about them. As someone 5 years ago, I didn't really like the medals, I just cared about playing the levels and would only get a medal if it was directly in front of me. I never went back and actually got any because I didn't think there was any relevance to them. And whereas now I'm much older and I like to collect everything I can find in a game, eventually this didn't work out in my favour as I got stuck in both Chunnan and Adabat, and I didn't feel like backtracking to get 30-something Sun medals, so I actually stopped playing the game. How foolish I was. Okay. You can easily get enough medals to progress in this game as long as you know the level layout and have a somewhat basic motor function of a 5-year-old. No, true, if you didn't know that these medals are important, then yes, that does fall in the game. But nowadays, with the age of the internet and many medal tutorials on the line, there is no reason as to why you should not have enough medals. Any reviewer nowadays that says, knowing that they'll need these medals and then saying, oh, well, I need 70 more, is just a complete idiot, okay? Now, there are some medals where you have to slow down and go off the beaten path to find it, and I agree it slows down the regular pace of the gameplay, but this clip you've just been seeing to get one medal with like, what, 10 seconds? Is it really that much of a crime? For crying out loud, there's a mini little hidden cafe in Winmore Isle Act 2, and you're saying that's a bad thing? If anything, that's amazing attention to detail, since it really makes this place you're blazing through feel alive. Okay, but if that isn't your thing, you don't need every medal. I strongly suggest you look at my Sonic Unleashed playthrough for this, because not once did I stop and revisit levels to get any more medals, since I was fine in looking for them. I'll agree, the much common notion on this one though, finding medals in the Werehog levels is much easier than the day levels, since the reduction in speed means these levels are practically meant to be explored. The medals won't be out in the open here as they can be in the day stages, but they're much easier to actually collect and practice. Just go around and take in and appreciate the level these people spent time making, and you'll have no trouble reaching out about just fine. Just go off the beaten path, maybe try some alternate paths, and eventually you'll get just enough Sun and Moon medals to beat the game. I'll touch more on these later, but there's even extra racks in the base game which can reward you with even more medals. They may not be as long as the main acts and they may not be as good, but they sure as hell have 3 medals that you can easily collect in them. Hell, even those side quests I mentioned earlier have the odd one in them. Give enough souvenirs to Professor Pickle or Future Chip? Medal. Now what do these medals actually do, you ask? Well, the more you collect, the higher your Sun and Moon medal level will go. Each level has a rating from 1 to 7, with more medals being needed to access later on levels. So many reviewers complain about these medals when they aren't really a problem. In fact, I go as far to say that if you complained about these medals saying that they ruined the game and were too hard to get, then you should be ashamed to call yourself a game reviewer. These medals are everywhere. If you didn't have enough because you hadn't been taking in all this game has to offer, then that's on you. It's not the game's fault you didn't collect souvenirs, play the extra acts, answer the side missions, you're just fucking idiotic. Don't let some Sonic-hating IGN reviewer tell you this game is bad because of these medals, just be on the lookout. Maybe look up a guide from Sonic the Medals on YouTube if you get stuck on a few, and take in all this game has to give. Be on the lookout and you'll be just fine. I leave you with this. A 16-year-old was able to clear the game without running into a part where he actually needed more medals, but people who played video games for a living did. Then again, this is footage from IGN's review of the game, like, who played this game for them, a toddler? Like, you wish he jumped over the dash pad to fall to your death, like, In fact, I go as far to say that the medals actually improved the game overall. Sonic has always had levels where you'd go off the beaten path to find the odd life and ring box, and if anything, I'd say that actually shows just how desperate some people are to hate on this game. Like, you can tell some of these people wrote a review with minimal knowledge of the game, and are just purposely trying to make it look as bad as possible because Sonic never works in 3D. Now, it is true you need 130 Sun medals or so to unlock Adabat Day, and even though that is easily achievable without any of the extra content I've listed, there's literal proof in my Sonic Unleashed playthrough I did like 2 years ago. Get out of town with your The Unleashed project is better nonsense. This game is good. I've said it once and I'll say it again. If you complain about the medals in this game, you should really be contemplating if you're playing the game correctly. The fact some people need 70 medals to hit the final stage is mind-blowing. I have no idea what they were doing for most of the game, but I sure as hell know that they might as well be classed as legally blind if they couldn't find most of these medals. How is it that you only end up getting 40 medals? That's the amount of medals that are in the whole world, for crying out loud. Like, were they that bad at the game? Like, the medals are not as bad as reviews will have you make it out, so I'm trying to get the... I keep getting off topic, because the reviews this game got were a goddamn joke, okay? I know there was no way it was going to be reviewed fairly given the last few Sonic games that have been released in the lead up to this game, but come on, they are not that bad. Now, what I do find interesting, mini comparison I'm going to make, is that the Wii and PS2 version of the medals are rewards for completing the levels with either any rank, an A rank or an S rank, with better ranks giving you more medals. You can use said medals to not unlock new stages, but actually access side rooms of the Gaia temples, which are explorable in this version. Here you can grab a life upgrade and some extra content like you can in the day stages here, and the puzzles are cool, having you switching between Day Sonic and Werehog Sonic to solve some pretty, actually difficult puzzles from what I can remember of playing the Wii version back in 2010 or whenever it was. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. What, you thought we were done? Now, as I mentioned before, this game has a considerable amount of extra acts for you to play in the base game, as well as some paid level packs downloadable from the PlayStation or Xbox Online stores respectively, for about £17.50 in total. So, first of all, the extra acts you get in the base game, just like the main acts, have to be discovered in the entrance stage areas, and will have an associated Sun and Moon level required to enter. These levels will typically last between 2 or 3 minutes depending on how well you know the level, and are still full of medals and collectibles that you can view back at Professor Pickle's lab, so don't let your goddamn just yet. They're definitely much harder than the regular acts to compensate for their shorter length, so if you enjoy a good challenge then be sure to give these a whirl, as they are free. On the other hand, clearly you've got to pay for the downloadable content acts. These levels are hard. They're a mix between completely new levels and previous levels that you may have already played, having a severe amount of spikes added to them. I cannot stress enough the amount of spikes that are in this level. It drove me goddamn up the wall. Don't worry, I will play them soon. But one major change to these levels is that there is no Sun and Moon medal and there is no collectible thing, so no matter what you decide to do, whether you buy the DLC or if you just keep the base game, you are still able to 100% it. The only difference is that you won't have access to certain stages. These levels definitely aren't everyone's cup of tea. They take on more kind of a rage approach than a regular level approach. God forbid if IGN actually played these, but if you're looking for a fun challenge or simply just more content for this game, then I highly suggest you fork over the money for these DLC acts, as it is a pretty good value for money, and completing one of these levels is one of the best feelings I've had in all in gaming. Plus, they make you run on the waterfall in Adabat, okay? And there's a level set above Spagonia. Some of the scenery in these levels, despite being associated with very, very difficult levels, and it's just mind-blowingly beautiful to think that they're still able to pull this off on hardware as old as it is. Besides the extra and DLC acts this game has, there's also the hot dog missions. These missions come in 5 types with 3 levels per type being harder than the last. The levels take place on main acts for each area, and completing a mission will either give you 1, 2 or 3 hot dogs for the area, which can be eaten by Sonic for a significant amount of XP. The 5 variety of missions are Ring, Battle and Time Trials in the day, and Survival and Time Trials in the night. Time Trials are what they say on the tin. Reach the goal ring within the time limit. There's no collectibles here, so you don't have to worry about having to sidetrack for that 100% save file. Up next is the Ring and Battle Trials, which involve you collecting and finishing the level with a certain amount of rings or having defeated a certain amount of enemies. And last but not least are the Survival missions, where the Werehog is unable to regenerate health and the later levels will start with less health than usual. If you die, it's straight back to the start. That's right, you die once, you've got to restart the level from the entire beginning, even though there are checkpoints here, which I'm not sure why they're here, I'm just assuming that they couldn't remove them from the level design for whatever reason. It's brutal, especially on levels like Empire City Day where you have no option but to take every shortcut, some of which are a blink and you miss type of deal. Seriously, I cannot stress how much I died to this one robot who would fire a projectile in the air, which I had to homing attack onto, and I die. I lost so many goddamn lives. But hey, it was a fun challenge. And then there's Eggmanland, which is not so much a fun challenge. Since it's a different type of stage to the others, there's only 3 time trial levels for this. The hardest to beat the level in only 45 minutes. Yeah, did I mention how long Eggmanland was? Take a moment to consider I'd be finishing some levels with 3 seconds left on the clock, and it's needless to say that you won't get the achievement of beating all these levels. Hats off to you. In all seriousness, these missions aren't so much hard to beat in the time limits they give you, since they are pretty lenient with that. It's more so the actual accomplishment here is beating the stage without dying 3 whole times. Yeah, you thought I'd forgotten about this version. No, I'm going to keep my thoughts on the SD version fairly short, but here's the rundown. In this game, the day stages have 1 or 2 main acts before mission-style acts introduced. Similar to the hot dog missions, these have a certain task like having to get so many rings or kill so many enemies within the time limit, but unlike the hot dog missions, these are mandatory. I can only guess this was to pad the game's length a bit, but due to this version very empty, at times level design, it just feels like a chore than a challenge. Oh yeah, this game made a few changes to the actual gameplay as well. For one, the homing attack is now mapped to the jump button, so most strangely, the boost in the day stages is split into these little sections, so you'll basically only be able to boost for every so many rings you collect, rather than it being continuous in the HD version, meaning you're basically going to be constantly wiggling the Wii remote or mashing whichever button it is to boost. The interceptor is also here, yay, but here it's actually beatable and there's no bombs as far as I can tell, which is nice. I can appreciate the fact that they actually give you a chance to make this thing be cut a lot more short, but defeating it early can just kind of leave you running down this straight line, I suppose. And it's like really empty and there's no music until you get back to the regular level section, and it's kind of really eerie. Here all the hub walls are replaced with simple 2D menu-like sprites, and I know this was to save on space because of the less powerful hardware, but I still prefer the 3D hub worlds. In their place, you get Gaia temples replicating the entrance stage, and these are fully explorable. You can even walk from continent to continent inside of them. Here you'll have a Sun and Moon door with the occasional boss door too, and then in release will play all of the associated stages back to back, so Sun door, day stages, Moon door, night stages, boss door, boss stages. Here are also the previously mentioned side rooms, which are full of extras, and a track I wish was used just once in the HD version. This version is also missing Empire City in its entirety, which is a shame because it didn't really have much story relevance, but it was still a good stage, so it's sad to see it go, even though it is understandable. Also gone are almost all of the Missouri stages, and instead there's just the Egg Beetle boss fight here. This I don't understand, since they could have easily made at least the day stage with the assets used in this boss fight, but then again, I'm not a game developer yet. The night stages are also split into 3 to 6 acts depending on the level, with a much shorter runtime than their HD counterparts. And I actually like this change. It allows for more different themes between levels, and with some I can remember distinctively being platforms in Adabat that were swirling around in a whirlpool, or Sonic climbing up a waterfall in Chunnan. Instead of a leveling system, Sonic gains power-ups throughout the game, much like he does in the HD version, and those mini side rooms. And the Werehog has a very linear leveling system, with upgrades being unlocked with XP, but there's just no option of what to upgrade. Everything else is here, though I don't go expecting any of those big spectacles to be here either, as the level design in this version, while different, isn't as good for the day stages. I personally do enjoy some of the night stages though, since they seem to be the better half of this game, which is kind of weird. And I feel like there is more variety in the types of enemies you'll be fighting. Talking about fighting, this game has motion controls because it's on the Wii, and I know they aren't everyone's thing, but here they're fine. You don't need them to precisionally platform, you just need to wiggle some Wii remotes and have a good old time. There is the option to pull them classic control though, which isn't your thing, so there is at least some way to get around the motion controls if your Wii remote likes to go off from time to time. But the biggest change for me was personally the final boss. See, while the previous bosses were all somewhat similar to the HD versions, Dark Gaia has changed completely. See, in Phase 1, instead of boosting towards him, you'll be dodging his attacks in a very close-up manner with the Gaia Colossus, and you need to dodge his attacks and then use that opening to deal damage to him. Once that's done, you'll play all 3 of Sonic's sections back to back with seemingly no timer. Yes, the quick time events are still here, but no, they're not as unforgiving as the HD versions ones are, mainly because there's less buttons. Once Phase 1 is done, you enter Phase 2. And you know how I said at the very beginning of this review that it took me multiple years to beat this game? Yeah, here's why. First of all, Sonic doesn't have a life bar here and instead runs as it traditionally does, on rings. Run out of rings, you die. What's different here, however, is that you need to attack all 7 of Dark Gaia's eyes, skipping past all that force field junk from before. In order to attack, you'll need 10 rings to default this course at the bottom, and you'll have to dodge flying rocks as you do so. Being hit means that you're gonna lose 10 rings, and it'll send you straight back into the normal play. Hitting an eye will make it close, meaning that it can no longer be attacked, and the rate of Dark Gaia's attacks will increase. It will also still take your 10 rings, so anytime you even think of attacking an eye, do know that you will need a couple more rings to stay alive afterwards. And this is what got me killed. See, having 10 rings to spend in a level with barely enough to last the length of the fight, and then having to use 70 out of, I believe, the 200 rings in the stage to beat him, it's just way too difficult. I once got as far as the final eye, only to fail, and that whole ordeal was just heartbreaking to 10-year-old me. No. He also attacks far too frequently. Anytime you get hit, you lose rings. And there's this one grid attack which is almost a certain way to get hit every single time, so on top of constantly losing rings to simply stay alive, and being hit and losing rings along with that, and then having to spend the rings to actually attack him, yeah, this boss can go fuck itself. Anyway, once all 6 of the side eyes are damaged, that guy will open its final eye. It's just a case of how the battle was done before, but with moving rocks this time, and the battle is done. Yeah, as difficult as the HD version of this boss can be, I see no reason as to how people prefer this. It's something else, and I do think if they were able to kind of balance the 2 versions of the fight we got, it could have been something special, but neither version of this fight is particularly excellent. This one's just horrific though. All of the bosses, NPCs and level settings are the same besides the changes I mentioned, and while this game got higher reviews than the HD version for some reason, it certainly is not the better version. Don't be misled by gaming journalism, it's a joke. Everything here just reminds me of the better version I couldn't be playing at the same time, and though I will admit it is at least worth a try to see the difference, don't come in here expecting the full experience. I can appreciate Sega actually making this version since at the time the price of next-gen consoles was pretty high, and a lot of people still did play on their Wii's and PS2s. I'm just glad they offloaded development to Dimps who made the Sonic Rush and Advance series, since I think if they split Sonic Team between 2 versions like they did for 06 and Secret Rings, that they would have both suffered as a result. So, if you want to know my rating for this version, it's a 5 out of 10. It's still Sonic Unleashed at its core, but it's just done really, really badly. I do still enjoy the night levels, however, but it just isn't fun at times, and comparing that to the absolute juggernaut that is the PS3 Xbox 360 version, it just pales in comparison. So that's it. That's the game which came after Sonic 06, which in my eyes was criminally underrated by fans and critics alike. Let's be honest, at this point hating on Sonic was the trend of the week, but I think this is what signalled the end of the Dark Age which came with the release of Shadow for so many people. This game could be perfect, but I'm yet to find a game which has done absolutely nothing wrong, and because of that I've got to knock off points. First off, while I didn't mind the medal collecting, I do think that if this game was to get a re-release that the requirements should be at least toned down, but I wouldn't mind a few extra medals here and there because the completionist side of me just needs that in my life. I only did hit what I needed because I knew I needed it, and I know some people will be only here for the main story and maybe jumping in blind, and therefore I think lowering the requirements so that it's still easily achievable if you're paying attention, it's fine. Second of all, the frame rate would need to be fixed. Empire City is for some reason one of the smallest hub worlds in the game, and yet it rarely gets at 15 FPS at night. Yeah, I'll admit that does bring the game down a little bit for me. And finally, the battle music will have to get a rehaul if the game is redone. That's my main gripe with the game. Just a few alterations when it play, and potentially some new tracks could really make the nighttime levels a whole lot more pleasant to go through. And yet, despite my irritation at Arid Sands being similar to Savannah Citadel, and despite the difficulty spikes, the medals, and the sometimes strange voice acting, this game is great. Let's be fair, Sonic 06 almost made sure this game would get bad reviews, and it's a true shame because a lot of the stuff here is genuinely good content that Sonic Team haven't used in over a decade, because the reviews made it out to seem as though everything in this game was awful besides the boost gameplay style. A lot of the complaints made about this game are the same rehashed points that have been around for years at this point, and as I said, I'm glad this game is getting the recognition it has been getting online recently, since this is a game you can tell the team put their hearts and souls into. For crying out loud, this was the game that made me realise I wanted to be a game developer someday. In fact, why else do you think I'm in college studying computing right now? It would be an honour to ever work on a game that has the same level of love, care and thought put into it as this one does. Go out and buy this game, used or brand new, it doesn't matter. As long as it works, you can get to experience arguably the best Sonic game out there, or at least a very damn good one. Sonic has always been about having interesting gimmicks in each game, since Sonic CD with its time travel, and adventure with multiple playstyles, and even Heroes with the team-based gameplay. The Werehog is the best gimmick I think we've seen thus far, and it's certainly the most polished from an objective standpoint. Buy this game, buy the DLC if you want a challenge, series coming soon, and give this game the recognition it deserves, damn it. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but Sonic Unleashed is a magnificent example of what a video game should be, and is yet still a wonderful Sonic game through and through. Saying the Werehog is stupid and that it doesn't belong is pointless. These games are always going to have additional gimmicks to spice up the gameplay, and quite honestly, as long as they're well done as they are here, I quite honestly don't mind. So, with all that said and all that aside, thanks for watching guys, my name's been Neremik, and despite its minor and obvious flaws, I still give Sonic Unleashed a 9.75 out of 10. Thanks for watching. And that is that, ladies and gentlemen. I have just finished editing that last scene that you have just seen, and this video is finally totaled out at 1 hour 24 minutes and however long this section goes on for. I actually expected this to be 40 minutes, so hey, the fact it's double, considering how fast I can speak and tend to speak at times, it's pretty out there. I'm just doing this kind of off the cuff because the rest of this video has been heavily scripted, though I've done like the occasional improv when I needed to. I just want to say a huge thank you if you've made it to this point now. I know what you're thinking, a 9.75 out of 10, but you've just spent a while going into reasons why this game isn't perfect, and yeah, that's why I didn't give it a 10 out of 10. This game for me is a 9.75 out of 10. If you are a different type of person, then that score is going to change, and I know that this is not everyone's ideal Sonic game, but goddamn it is mine. I grew up with the Wii version of this game, and I can say there was absolutely no nostalgia blinding me when I gave that game a 5 out of 10 earlier, and there is absolutely no nostalgia blinding me for the new version of this as well, which I only picked up around 4 years ago. It is insane how often that just people praising this game are written off online because nostalgia and whatnot, but no, I think that's a lie. Calling this game bad is just not true. This game has so much going right for it. And it's just a shame that this game isn't viewed properly because A, it's a 3D Sonic game, and B, a lot of people are just following the crowd with this. So, I don't know, maybe people start following my crowd. I'm not going to say it's the right crowd, you're allowed to have your own opinion on this game. Just, again, this game really needs some love, okay? The fact that this game got so panned, even though so much effort went into it, is just mind-blowing. Now, I do want to say, a lot of people asked me this question in development. They asked me what my score was going to be, and I gave them it straight up, 9.75, only a 0.25 higher than I gave City Folk, though recently that's been knocked down a couple pegs, as I'm sure you can guess by the release of New Horizons, but 9.75 out of 10 is my score for this game. I think this game is great, I think it is deserving of that score, and I think that this game is possibly, if you enjoy the battle music, and, you know, this game has the perfect control scheme for you, then yes, I do believe this is one of the few games in history that you could actually give a 10 out of 10. But for me, it doesn't gel with me 100%, but it sure as hell does for a lot of it. So, again, just a little bit of credit sequence now. I want to give a huge thank out to a bunch of YouTube channels which I used footage from. So, again, I'm just going to go through this. I do have a little tab open. Again, I would have done this with Facecam, but it's currently 1 AM, so hey, who knows? Maybe we're going to go summon a demon or something, boys. Who knows? So, first of all, I want to thank Sonic the Medals, certain extra acts, and more importantly, that random medal from Win the WoW Act 2. I especially needed that. I also want to thank someone on YouTube called Anon7906. I got a lot of the unWIIshed footage from him, so huge shout out to him. And the new EGS, I got a lot of Hub World and Gaia Gate footage from him. And the final person that I got any sort of footage from, I can't speak, it's 1 AM. Okay, again, this is very off the cuff. As this person called Master Shifu, obviously, he just did a Xbox live stream of doing the hot dog missions, and since I didn't actually interact with those in the rest of the gameplay, which was my original Let's Play of this, I was just like, hey, I'm going to find a person live streaming hot dog missions and kind of navigate those menus, and you know, that's it. Everything else is pretty much my own footage, which I know sounds really stupid, but let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you think this game is egregious? Do you finally thank the lords that a review like this has come along and hopefully change the tide? But again, I just want to say, like, a comment would be massively appreciated. The fact that you're here without skipping the video, assuming, even if you make it here on 1.25, 1.5 times 2 speed, I honestly don't care. The fact that you're here right now and have hopefully watched most of the video, if you've just skipped the end for the score, okay, go here. This whole video is a roller coaster of emotions, okay? I'm not sure exactly how many video cuts there are. I'm going to put it on screen about now. I'm going to make the current one on one continuous one to make it easier. Again, this was spent like maybe 2 days writing, most of 1 day voicing, and then 3 whole days editing with numerous hours in between, plus like a whole day to upload, get the description titles right, which I'm not there yet, but again, hopefully you have enjoyed this premiere if you're watching this live, and hopefully you've enjoyed this review if you've been watching it live. And okay, I'm going to set a ridiculous like goal, okay? I will review Sonic Generations if this video ends up getting 100 likes. Last time I set a like goal of like 10 likes and I said I'd make some dumb music video. It hits a like goal in a day, so I'm setting this high. You make this most liked thing on my channel, then I'll review Sonic Generations next, but only if I see you wanting in the comments. Okay, this video was hell to make, but yeah, with that, thank you for making it through this video. Again, this last one's just mainly from the heart. I've poured an absolute ton of time into this, so I'm glad that you've been able to enjoy it. Or hey, maybe you're just going to dislike the hell out of this video. I sure as hell don't know how this is going to go. I can't see the future. This is as far forward as any clip in this video is going to get. But that's it. Let me know what you think. Do you have the same opinions as me? Do you think that some of my opinions were kind of off? Would you adjust my score? What would you agree and or disagree with me on? And with that, we should be crossing the 90-minute mark, okay? This is officially longer than some blockbuster movies, and you spent it watching a Sonic Unleashed review on YouTube. Well done, you. And that's not a criticism by me. I can't speak, okay? Like I said, this is 1 AM, I'm trying to be quiet. I tried recording this before and was told to shut up by my parents, and now they're asleep. Hopefully this wakes them up, haha. That was a bit mean, I might have to cut that out. Nah, it's leaving in. But, yeah, you could have gone and watched Ratatouille, but you watched me instead, so, again, thank you for that. But if you enjoyed this, again, be sure to leave a thumbs up, possibly subscribe, turn notifications, leave a comment down below. I had to cut so much out of this. It wasn't because it was necessarily bad, but I just had to trim down so much, and this is an absolute pain. Chances are I'm rendering in 1440p to make it look as crisp as humanly possible. So again, any support you can give this video, share it on Twitter, leave it a like, leave it a dislike, because somehow that helps in the algorithm. Again, I sound like a broken record, okay? I was meant to have a coffee before, there was no milk. Yes, it was 11 PM, I'm not supposed to be having coffee, I'm heading to bed immediately after this, but you get the gist. So, with all that said, and all that aside, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have making it. But, thanks for watching, guys. My name's Neremik, and peace out.